At the end of the 19th century, in the fields of Kentucky, a boy spent hours among the trees, immersed in ancient texts. Edgar Cayce was not an ordinary child. Since he was little, he claimed to see ethereal beings, described as fairies, but that seemed more like spirits. At the age of 11, he had a striking vision. A woman of light appeared and asked what his greatest wish was. Edgar replied without hesitation. He wanted to help others, especially sick children. That moment defined his destiny and paved the way for his unusual abilities. At school, he faced difficulties and suffered from his father's demands. One day, the same female voice gave him a piece of advice: sleep on the books. Upon waking, he discovered that he had absorbed all the content, as if he had studied for years in a single night. This phenomenon defied any logical explanation. Before we continue, how about diving even deeper into the mysteries of time and destiny? Here on the channel, we explore prophecies, hidden revelations, and events that defy logic. If you want to better understand what the future may hold and uncover secrets that history has tried to hide, subscribe now and turn on notifications. Moreover, leave a like on this video. This helps us bring more enigmatic content and keep the search for the unknown alive. Now get ready, because what you are about to discover may change your perception of reality. However, the most impressive was yet to come. After a serious accident, he was left immobile, with no hope of recovery. During a feverish night, he murmured a specific recipe with medicinal herbs. Desperate, his parents followed his instructions and, to everyone's astonishment, the next morning, Edgar was completely cured. His gift was real and impossible to ignore. Over time, his predictions began to take on unbelievable proportions. He anticipated devastating wars, economic crises, and even the rise of China as a global power. Among his correct predictions were also the end of the Great Depression and the collapse of communism in Europe. However, not everything came to pass. One of his most controversial predictions was the return of Jesus by the year 2000, something that did not happen, sparking heated debates. Even with skeptics questioning his authenticity, Edgar Cayce remained steadfast in his mission. His psychic readings were not limited to predictions about the world. He explored spirituality, talked about past lives, and even described ancient lost civilizations. His knowledge went beyond the ordinary, addressing topics that the science of the time could not explain. Was Edgar Cayce a true messenger of the unknown, or just a man with an extraordinary mind? His legacy continues to intrigue scholars and curious minds, and his mystery persists to this day. The deeds of the sleeping prophet seemed limitless. In 1902, a young woman with a severe head injury was brought to him. The doctors had no hope, but Cayce, in a trance, stated that the real problem was in the spine. Following his instructions, the doctors adjusted her posture, and surprisingly she recovered. Besides medicine, Cayce also made predictions about the economy. In 1929, before the stock market crash, he warned his friends to sell their stocks, saving many from devastating losses. He also predicted the economic recovery between 1930 and 1933, which eventually happened. In 1934, he anticipated Hitler's rise and predicted that his power would end due to a war started by external forces. He also stated that Germany, Austria, and Japan would form an alliance, something confirmed by World War II. Cayce also made revelations about Atlantis. In 1938, he said that ruins of this civilization would be submerged near Bimini, in the Bahamas. In 1968, researchers found submerged structures at the site, raising the possibility that his prediction was correct. He claimed that Atlantis had advanced technology and was destroyed 10,000 years ago by a flood, possibly linked to the biblical deluge. One of his most surprising predictions stated that the 44th president of the USA would be African American, which came true with Barack Obama. He also anticipated the assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Franklin Roosevelt, and predicted the civil rights movements of the 1960s. During the Cold War, He stated that the world's hope would come from Russia, but not under communism. Decades later, the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991 seemed to validate his vision. He also spoke about the Essenes even before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, adding more mystery to his legacy. His predictions continue to intrigue scholars. Did Cayce really access knowledge beyond time, or was he just someone with uncommon perception? The mystery persists. In 1934, when little was known about the Essenes, Cayce described this Jewish sect in astonishing detail. He stated that their records would be discovered, which came true 12 years later with the revelation of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This discovery brought credibility to his predictions and reinforced the mystery about the origin of his knowledge. His predictions were not limited to the 20th century. Edgar Cayce made impressive statements about the future of the Earth, suggesting drastic changes in the planet's geography. He predicted that the continents would undergo irreversible transformations, and that extreme natural events would reconfigure the world as we know it. One of the signs of this catastrophic event, according to him, would be the simultaneous eruption of two volcanoes, Mount Etna in Italy and Mount Pelee in Martinique. Both remain active to this day, which makes this prophecy even more intriguing. If this occurs, it would be an indication that the earthly changes predicted by Cayce are underway. Africa, according to his predictions, would be one of the most affected continents. He stated that the continent would split into 3 parts, with the widening of the Nile River and the expansion of the Red Sea. Cairo, one of the busiest cities in the world, could be swallowed by the waters, disappearing beneath the sea. Asia would also undergo radical transformations. Cayce predicted that the Pacific Ocean would advance, submerging large regions of the Philippines, Japan, and the Chinese coast. Japan, in particular, would lose a large part of its territory, with only a few scattered islands remaining. Korea and the Chinese coast would also be swallowed by the seas. For India, he issued a peculiar warning. He said that seeking refuge in higher elevations could be dangerous, as the ground could give way. However, he pointed out that Tibet and Nepal would be safer places in the face of these changes. Cayce also spoke about an unexpected future for Antarctica. According to him, the frozen continent would lose its ice cover and become a lush region, ideal for agriculture. This scenario, although unlikely for many, aligns with studies on climate change that indicate a possible thaw in the future. On the other hand, according to Cayce, Australia would not have the same luck. What he predicted for that region is still a mystery, but his words suggested that the continent would face severe environmental challenges. The prophecies of Edgar Cayce continue to intrigue scholars and enthusiasts. Would they be mere assumptions, or are we really heading towards a future shaped by his visions? Time will tell. Edgar Cayce predicted that Australia would face devastating floods, covering a quarter of its territory. Cities like Adelaide would be submerged, while arid deserts, such as Simpson and Gibson, would transform into fertile lands for agriculture. In contrast, he stated that New Zealand would remain unscathed and expand, connecting with Australia and serving as a refuge for those displaced by global cataclysms. In Europe, the changes would be equally impactful. According to Cayce, the northern part of the continent, including Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark, would be taken by the waters, leaving only fragments of land visible. The United Kingdom would suffer significant losses, with vast areas from Scotland to the English Channel submerged. However, some elevated regions, such as London and Birmingham, could withstand the catastrophe. Ireland, in turn, would be almost completely swallowed by the ocean, with only its highest peaks emerging above the waters. One of Cayce's most surprising predictions involved the creation of a new sea, formed by the merging of the Caspian, Black, and Baltic Seas. This event would isolate Russia from continental Europe, but at the same time, it would make its lands highly fertile, transforming the country into the region's great agricultural granary. The transformations in North America would be equally radical. He predicted that the coast of Canada would expand by up to 320 kilometers, reconfiguring the country's geography. Regions such as Quebec, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta would become refuges for populations displaced from Asia and Europe. The United States would undergo a dramatic territorial reconfiguration. The movement of tectonic plates would create about 150 new islands along the California coast, while the West Coast would retreat eastward, getting closer to states like Nebraska, Wyoming, and Colorado. The Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River would merge, creating a vast expanse of water that would connect the Mississippi River to the Gulf of Mexico. The East Coast, on the other hand, would face severe flooding, submerging areas from Maine to Florida. Mexico would also suffer from these changes, with parts of the Baja California peninsula fragmenting into an archipelago of small islands. Cayce warned that these transformations would cause mass displacements and the death of billions of people. Finally, Cayce predicted a significant advancement in human longevity, with individuals living for centuries. Although medical advances have extended life expectancy since his time, the reality of living for hundreds of years still seems a distant enigma. Edgar Cayce predicted a major global conflict, pinpointing the Persian Gulf as the ignition point. Countries like Libya, Egypt, and Syria would be involved, and even regions close to Australia could be affected. Although a large-scale war has not yet begun, their forecasts warn of increasing tensions in global geopolitics. One of Cayce's most unusual predictions involved China. He believed that the country would become a dominant power, and even a significant center for Christianity in the future. For him, this transformation would take generations, but China would eventually exert great religious and cultural influence in the world. Cayce also presented controversial theories about the origins of humanity. He claimed that 5 distinct races were created simultaneously in different parts of the world: white, black, red, brown, and yellow. According to him, these races were strategically placed by divine creation itself. One of his most intriguing claims was about the lost civilization of Atlantis. He suggested that the Atlanteans, known as the Red People, fled to the Americas after the destruction of their homeland. For Cayce, the Cherokees and the Incas would be direct descendants of these survivors. Besides Atlantis, he mentioned another lost land called Lemuria, which would be situated between Europe and America. According to him, the inhabitants of this civilization migrated to Greece, establishing the Minoan civilization and possibly influencing Egyptian engineering. His predictions also addressed the future of humanity. He believed that there was an evolutionary leap 18 million years ago, when life emerged from the transformation of spirit into matter. Moreover, he stated that between 10,000 BC and 3000 BC, humanity underwent a significant evolution, initiating a cycle of progress that would continue until 2400 AD. According to Cayce, around the year 8000, humanity would have overcome its mental limitations, abandoning traditional social structures. He predicted a future in which schools and institutions would be unnecessary, as human beings would reach a higher state of consciousness. His followers believe that these changes are still underway. Could it be possible that humanity is moving towards a level of enlightenment never before imagined? Time will tell. Although many of Edgar Cayce's predictions impressed his followers, some of them never materialized, generating debates and criticism even among his admirers. Among his most controversial ideas, he claimed that souls mixed with animals, creating giant beings 12 meters tall. Moreover, he believed that Atlantis was powered by a huge solar crystal, something with no archaeological evidence. Other failed predictions include the discovery of a supposed death ray by the United States in 1958, similar to the one that supposedly destroyed Atlantis 12,000 years ago. In 1930, Cayce claimed that major earthquakes would devastate Los Angeles and San Francisco, but these cities remain intact to this day. One of its most significant failures was the prediction of Jesus' return in the year 2000. Religions such as Christianity and Islam speak about this event, but without defining dates. Cayce made an exact prediction, but time proved him wrong. Other historical figures, such as Frank Cherry and Pastor Ed Dobson, also erred in trying to predict the same event. Even with flaws, his prophecies continue to be debated, Some believe that his visions are legitimate glimpses of the future, while others see them as mere guesses. The impact of their predictions is undeniable, inspiring books, studies, and communities dedicated to understanding their legacy. Experts are trying to unravel whether Cayce accessed a universal truth or simply had an exceptionally intuitive mind. He conducted more than 14,000 readings throughout his life, and statistically, it is natural that some predictions coincided with real events. However, critics argue that his successes receive more attention than his failures. Furthermore, they point out that Cayce used vague language and expressions like maybe and possibly, allowing for broad interpretations. This strategy is common among psychics and allows generic statements to seem applicable to various situations. Another point of contention is that Cayce used to receive letters from sick people, conducted readings to help them, but in some cases, the recipients had already passed away before he could provide any guidance. The legacy of Edgar Cayce remains enigmatic. Do his failed predictions discredit him, or do his visions still hold secrets for the future? The debate remains open. The defenders of Edgar Cayce argue that if those who sought his help had followed his advice in life, they might have avoided death. However, a question arises. Why didn't Cayce realize that some of his patients were already dead before conducting his readings? This fact raises questions about the legitimacy of his abilities. Moreover, when his predictions failed, justifications often emerged. On one occasion, Cayce indicated a specific location where a pirate treasure would be buried. Extensive searches were conducted, but nothing was found. His supporters suggested that spirits of pirates or indigenous people might have moved the treasure, a convenient explanation for the absence of evidence. Despite the criticism, Cayce still has fervent followers. Many highlight his accuracy in medical diagnoses, even without formal training in the field. This ability, combined with a fascination for the paranormal, ensured their lasting influence. Studies indicate that belief in psychic phenomena remains strong in contemporary society. Recent research shows that many people believe in extrasensory perceptions. The data reveals that skeptics tend to be more analytical and critical, while believers exhibit more emotional and intuitive thinking. Interestingly, those who believe in the supernatural report higher levels of happiness and lower stress compared to skeptics. The debate about psychic abilities and religious miracles persists because such phenomena challenge traditional scientific explanations. For many, these experiences provide comfort in difficult times and bring a sense of order to a chaotic world. This leads us to a fundamental question: does the supernatural really exist? This is a complex question with no definitive answer. Some people find purpose and hope in supernatural beliefs, while others prefer interpretations based on logic and science. It is a fact that some supposed psychics may exploit others' faith for personal gain, generating even more skepticism. However, the emotional and psychological impact of these beliefs is undeniable. Edgar Cayce stood out from other self-proclaimed psychics by never charging for his readings and by demonstrating a genuine desire to help. His legacy continues to inspire discussions about the limits of the human mind and the mysteries of the unknown. Regardless of whether his abilities were real or the result of an extraordinary mind, what truly stands out in Edgar Cayce is his dedication to others. He did not seek fame or fortune, but rather to offer help and hope to those who sought him. In an increasingly individualistic world, his example reminds us of the importance of empathy and altruism. If there were more people willing to act with the same spirit of solidarity, we would certainly live in a better place. Despite the discussions about the authenticity of her psychic abilities, her greatest lesson was not in her predictions, but in the way she used her gift to help others. Her story teaches us that, regardless of beliefs in the supernatural, compassion and generosity are transformative forces. A fascinating curiosity about Cayce is the reason he became known as the sleeping prophet. He conducted his readings in a deep trance state, lying down with his eyes closed, as if he were sleeping. During those moments, he seemed to access knowledge that transcended human understanding. This raises an intriguing question. What if we all had the ability to access unexplored areas of our minds? Cayce suggested that human beings possess hidden potential waiting to be unlocked. If we could access this profound knowledge, what else could we discover about the universe and ourselves? Your story invites us to explore not only the mysteries of the world, but also the mysteries within ourselves. His legacy goes beyond predictions. He makes us reflect on the power of the human mind, on the importance of serving others, and on the possibility that there is still much to be discovered. The true impact of Edgar Cayce is not just in what he saw, but in what he inspired in each of us. Thus, while his prophecies will continue to be debated, one undeniable truth remains: his compassion and desire to help continue to resonate, reminding us that the greatest gift we can have is the ability to make a difference in the lives of others.